Let's talk about the honest truth about the PMP exam prep. Firstly, for those who say the PMP exam is just useless and I'm not taking it, I feel sorry for you because you may very well realize it's hard to fight against what has come to stay for now. I'm not saying that's going to be forever. But right now, do you know that when you apply for a project management job, the filters, the gears are turning, looking for proof of PMP existence or comparable, CAP-M. And even if not that, the gears are turning and looking for proof of some project management education at a minimum. But most employers in today's day and age are going to select the candidate for the interview that has a PMP. Those that have a CAP-M, maybe. But if you're looking for the senior project manager roles, PMP has to be on the menu. So for those who fight against it and say bad things about it, good luck to you. But those who are smart, who are looking to make inroads into the world of project management, they're going to get their PMP. I discovered this way back in 2005, over 20 years ago. I knew that I needed to get the PMP. I knew that I needed to get it to elevate where I was, the firm I was at, the projects I was working on, and how I was doing them. I knew I needed PMP. So for those of you who are very keen on getting the project management professional certification, I want to give you some encouragement not to give up, not to see it as a waste of time, not to see it as needless and tedious, but instead see it as a learning opportunity. I also want to give you some insights how to do this. You're making it too difficult for yourself because you are looking at the enormity of the syllabus as opposed to compartmentalizing the syllabus. You know what you need to do? 3 things. Number 1, nail down the people domain. Understand leadership, understand communication, understand conflict resolution, understand stakeholders, understand the dynamics between stakeholders, team members, both from the world of predictive and the world of agile. Understand the 5 stages of team development. Understand the Thomas Kilmann conflict mode instrument. Understand the Hersey-Blanchard model. And understand Herzberg's theory, McGregor's theory, not because you're going to get questioned verbatim from those, but instead because it helps you understand how people are wired. The people domain can really help you amp up your abilities and your opportunities on the PMP exam because a lot of the questions revolve around people anyway, even though they may sprinkle in a process dimension, but it's really you are a project manager. That's people straight up. What should you do next? Now that could have some process baked in, but it always has some stakeholder, team member, someone in the background, even if it's a process question. So it behooves you to spend time understanding the things I've mentioned. That's why when I train this in my book, PMP Exam Immersion, I first teach people what leadership is from an organic standpoint, based on the teachings of John C. Maxwell, my mentor, to give them a solid base. So you need to spend time understanding leadership organically, servant leadership, Robert Greenleaf's 10 tenets of servant leadership, and so on and so forth. Then, number 2, get into the process domain. I keep telling people you got to understand the holy grail of the traditional aspects from PMI's lens. And the best documentation we have to date to do that is PMBOK 6. You got to understand integration, scope, schedule, cost, quality, resources, communications, risk, procurement, stakeholder. You got to understand those. And then you need to understand the flow in each area of knowledge. What comes first? Do you direct and manage the project work, or do you develop a project charter? Do you develop a project charter, or do you conduct a needs assessment? Do you conduct a needs assessment first, Or do you work on a business case? Do you work on a business case first, or do you work on a benefits management plan? These are things you need to understand the sensibilities and the flow of. And that's why I tell people, you got to know your 49. It's just going to help you. I've come across so many people that say, Phil, I failed the exam. And the reason why, eventually, it will unfold. The reason why they didn't do so well is they didn't have an acute understanding of the flow of the knowledge areas, the sensibilities of the knowledge areas, and the translation of the knowledge areas into the world of Agile. They didn't understand it. I want to encourage you, spend some time really knuckling down to get your 49 processes. For my friends who I just concluded a class with you out in Perth, make sure you're doing this. It is going to help you join the dots. Integration, 7 things. What are they? How do they come into the picture and why? Scope, understanding a scope baseline. It's composed of 3 things: a WBS dictionary, a project scope statement. What is the difference between a requirements management plan and a scope management plan? What is the difference between a requirements traceability matrix and a requirements management plan? You got to understand these dimensions. And getting into the WBS, again, the structure, right? The code of accounts, control accounts, planning packages, work packages. You got to understand this stuff. It is part of the holy grail of the PMP. And then getting into schedule, understanding how to put a schedule together, what is slack, what is float, what is leads, what is lags, what are relationship types. How do I show lead time in a schedule? Is it plus? Is it minus? How do I show lag time? What is the difference between slack and float versus leads and lags? You got to understand that stuff, not to mention crashing and fast tracking. You see, these are things in the process domain that you must pay attention to. And then understanding the critical path is going to help you. And getting to cost, understanding the sensibilities of estimating and budgeting. And eventually, when your budget is put together, what is the difference between a cost baseline versus when we say budget? When we talk about management reserves and contingency reserves, these are topics you must pay attention to. And then getting into earned value, SPI, CPI, CV, SV, you got to understand that stuff. And then we get into quality, knowing the flow. You plan, you manage, you control. The difference between manage versus control. Quality audits, quality control. Quality audits is manage quality. Quality control is an inspection, managing the flow, understanding when to have a quality audit versus when to have a full-blown inspection. And after the inspection, the feedback loops that lead you back to quality assurance, which is really managed quality. These are things you must pay close attention to. If you watch the Praision channel on YouTube, I talk about many of these things over and over again. And if you go to pmradio.org, I talk about these things over and over again. Okay? After quality, you got to think about resources, human, equipment, material, supplies, and facilities. Then you got to think about communications, how it should be transparent, whether in the world of agile or in the world of predictive. Then the world of risk. You got to understand the flow. You got to plan how to manage the risk, identify the risk, do a qualitative risk analysis, do a quantitative risk analysis. In many companies, they don't do a quantitative risk analysis. But for your PMP exam, you need to be thinking about a quantitative risk analysis. Planning risk responses, implementing risk responses. What does that entail? Monitoring risks, right? When you plan risk responses, you think about avoid, transfer, escalate, accept, mitigate. You got to think about those 5 strategies for negative risks or threats, and then the 5 strategies for positive risks or opportunities. I call it EASE, E-A-S-E-E. E for escalate, A for accept, S for share, E for exploit, E for enhance. You got to understand the subtlety, so when you get the questions on the exam, you're going to nail it. You're going to kill it. But you need to spend time taking copious mock exams and quizzes. Some of you don't have enough quizzes to take, or you're taking quizzes that are so obsolete and annoying, you should go to pmpdoctor.com and take my 35 quizzes for each task for the PMP exam. After risk, you think about procurements, you plan procurement management, you conduct procurements, you control procurements, understanding the flow, understanding contract types, and all that stuff. And lastly, stakeholder engagement, right? We call it stakeholder management. You got to identify your stakeholders, plan how to engage them, then you manage the engagement by engaging them, and then you monitor the engagement. This is the flow of the process domain. The second thing that you have to get down tight. And when we think about the process domain, a lot of times people are just thinking predictive, and that's wrong. You got to also think agile. So the values, the principles, Scrum as a model, right, for the framework that exposes you more into the world of Agile and how it's done hands-on, and then Kanban. Those two are quite prominent. You need to understand those two. The final thing, the third thing to nail down your PMP is the business domain. And the business domain is all about how project management relates to the business thinking. The product owner is a great archetype in the world of Agile for how to adopt this business thinking to the work at hand. So if I were you, I would spend time. Let me give you a very simple strategy. Week 1, people domain. Week 2 and 3, process domain, because it's big. Week three is going to be the end of the process domain. And if you have enough time, you can begin studying the business domain. But week 4, I'll dedicate week 4 to the business domain. So week 1, people. Week 2 and 3, process. And then the final week, business. People, process, business. Week 4 is going to be the business domain, and that's also where you take a final mock exam. Like I said, you could go to pmpdoctor.com. We've got mock exams and quizzes that you can use for the cadence. Because in my mind, you've got 14 in people. You need to narrow those down in the first week. Then you can take a quiz every day just to sharpen your skills and knowledge. And then go into the process domain, look for the quizzes on pmpdoctor.com. For those of you who are already on my program, you're already on that program on the Flexi site, so don't worry about that. But for those of you that are not, you might want to explore pmpdoctor.com to give you the cadence, the rhythm for people, week 1, process, week 2 and 3. If you got a little bit of time, you can start with business, but I would say week 4, business, and the final mock exam. Rinse, repeat, get good, get great with all these topics I've mentioned. And schedule your exam. A lot of people ain't scheduling the exam and they're like, Phil, I haven't taken the exam 1 year later. Of course you're not going to take the exam because you didn't schedule it. You got to schedule the exam. It fires you up. The adrenaline kicks in. And you're like, oh my goodness, I've paid $500 and, well, no, sorry. Depending on if you're a member or not. It could be $575 or it could be $600 plus, depending on if you're PMI member or not. But it really fires up the adrenaline and you're like, oh, I really need to study so I don't waste my money. Okay? I hope this gave you some guidance and some insights to getting ready for your PMP exam. If you do not have a full-blown course to take, go on down to tinyurl.com/elite PMP. You'll be able to study with me all of these topics, all the 35 tasks, the knowledge areas, the process groups, including the principles of project management that the PMI put in the 7th edition. I cover them all in the Elite PMP course. So go to tinyurl.com/elite PMP if you need that 35 hours of instruction for your exam. I hope this gave you some encouragement. PMP, I know some people don't like it, but maybe to you it's a necessary evil. Whatever you do, just see it as a must for your career, especially if you're starting out I know some folks have been managing projects for eons. You may not look at it as something necessary, but I've also come across people who suddenly lost their employment and are looking to redefine themselves. And those folks, they come to me and say, Phil, I got to take the exam now. Don't wait for that. Make it a preemptive strike, okay? Thank you for joining me today. Smash that like button and share this with someone who's trying to get PMP certified. See you soon. Bye for now.